powered group. Very excited to have 3 leaders with us today. We're going to give it just another minute and a half here, and then we'll get started. Thanks. I like the zodiac signs. That's a good idea.
You can also, you can play around with it. We can do, favorite side dish on Thanksgiving. We could do, it depends on the time of year.
Sounds like someone that is familiar with team experiences and group engagement, coming up with some of those.
We have some really fun Slack channels with different engagement pieces. Like today we had a little icebreaker, which was like, what's like one like super, just nothing serious, not like, what would you change about this world that isn't like world peace or anything that's like political or whatever, just like something lighthearted and fun. And people were like, I wish donuts didn't have calories, and I wish I could, exercise without exercising. And there was all kinds of cute stuff that came up on there. So
that's great. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started today. And Scott, if you want to tee up that first slide there, and I'll just provide introductory remarks. My name is Matt Willis. I am the Senior VP at Advantage Club. We are very excited today to host a distinguished panel. We will provide introductions in just a moment. Just to let everyone know today where we're headed, you will have questions, and there may be some specific questions by size of company, industry, government, corporation, et cetera, that we may or may not get to. You do have an avenue during the webinar. Down at the bottom corner of your screen, there's a question button, and you can ask questions. We do have a team behind us that are vetting those questions. They will send them to me, and I will ask the panelists. If we don't have the time, you have a second option, and that is after this panel is done, it is being recorded. And that recording is going to be made available by the panelists. And we'll have information on each of the panelists, how to get in touch with them, and the ability to talk with one of our senior engagement leaders on anything related to your specific organization. Next slide. Great. So how can we maximize all of our time today? Very simple. There's going to be 4 topics that the panelists are going to weigh in on. One is, what are the trends going on, macro, on engagement? So we're going to talk through the trends and see what's happening. Next is employee needs, then recognition trends, then experiences. Before we get started, I do have introductions. So I'm going to start with 3 of our 3 panelists. I'm going to start with Dr. Andre Martin. Dr. Andre Martin has he has a PhD in organizational psychology, been in practice for the last 25 years. And Dr. Martin has had senior leadership and executive positions with very small companies, including Nike, Mars, Disney, Accenture, Target, and Google. So in addition to his time at those organizations, he has become an author, a very hot book right now that we will give you a link to at the end, Wrong Fit, Right Fit. And in addition to that, is a very frequent speaker, author, and lecturer on really all things related to not only engagement, but development, team building. So we're very excited to have Andre with us here today. In addition, we have Lee Rubin. And Lee Rubin is at the University of Florida. And after several years marketing and business, Lee became really a pioneer in the concept of in-person team meetings becoming into in-term virtual experiences. And today, Lee is with fast-growing company Confetti with Confetti, over 8,000 customers, including very big companies like Facebook and Google. And Confetti it's used by businesses to provide exclusive team building, DEI, and professional development experiences. So as a result of that, Lee has been showered with a number of accolades, including the top 125 female founders. That's through Inc. magazine, and Tech Roundup, top 40 entrepreneurs under 40. So we're very excited to have Lee. She also is a frequent speaker on employee engagement and experiences. And then we have Smiti. And Smiti is the co-founder and the CEO of Advantage Club. Smiti's background includes a distinguished Master of Science in Engineering from UCLA. And after UCLA, she is alumni of working at Microsoft. Advantage Club today, as co-founder and CEO, just celebrated 4 million users in over 120 countries. And it is the category leader for employee engagement, recognition, and rewards in terms of software platforms. Smiti has numerous awards and accolades, really too long to list, but the most recent were the Economic Times highlighted Smiti as Inspiring Woman of the Year, and the Times Ascent provided Smiti in the last year with the Entrepreneur of the Year award. So Smiti is not only a TEDx speaker, but a frequent lecturer on all things engagement. So I will do my best to shorten my time here and get right to this distinguished panelist. And if we could start off with, we're going to get to our first topic today. Hey, what's going on in the employment engagement landscape? So hot off the press, Gallup is one of the leaders in providing some of these stats, and they just provided stats literally this week. 83% of employees are not engaged at work. What does that mean? That means we have just a small portion, somewhere between 63 and 83%, depending on your stats, that are not fully engaged in their current job. We also know that over a third of all employees, they're going to leave within 90 days. In fact, some people with offer letter in hand are still actively looking for another job. The other thing we know is 51% of those people that we have as employees are looking for their next job. So what does that cost? Well, the cost from Deloitte is roughly 34% of an annual salary is what it costs a company when they're disengaged. I think the number, and Andre cites it in his book, is $1.9 trillion lost yearly because of disengagement is an aggregate. And today, job market is still tight, but it's costing more and more to bring on new people. So an average cost of $4,700, it keeps going up and to the right. So we have a harder time hiring, much harder time retaining, and a lot has to do with that employee engagement. Next slide. So what is the disconnect? Well, the disconnect today is, hey, if we were all in a room and said, show your hands, how many people are engaging with their employees? All senior leaders are going to raise their hands. Yeah, we're recognizing employees. But if you go to the front lines and say, hey, have you been recognized in your organization? Almost 68%, varies from 40 to 68%, say, I haven't received any recognition this year. So what we have is a real gap today, accelerated by COVID, accelerated by virtual working. But we have this idea that we are not engaged. We don't feel that culture. We don't feel that companionship amongst our peers. So Gen Z workers, about 88%, and millennials, they report numerous studies. We feel excluded at work. Now, there is an upside. There is a greater sense of belonging when their colleagues check in with them. So we're gonna explore that. Next slide. Okay, and if we want to put this aside for a second, I want to simply ask the panel, you've seen the stats, you've been to a lot of these great speakers. what are you personally seeing out there? And on this one, we'll start with Lee, and then we'll do the round robin and get everyone's weigh in on what's happening today in terms of the trends.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for the wonderful intro, Matthew. I'm really excited to be here with everyone. As for trends, I do think that there is a very big shift in focus on employee well-being. And I think that it's obvious that the past few years have been extremely challenging for everyone. And it's really about figuring out how do we best support employees while still recognizing that a lot of companies are struggling, and there needs to be some kind of crossroads between supporting them and pushing the company forward, which can be challenging at times. So that's one big trend that I'm seeing. Another one is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is starting to become, not just a buzzword anymore, not just a moral imperative, but a strategic advantage that companies are diving into to become a more globalized, remote-first market. And of course, my third one that I can't skip out on is hybrid work models, because full year of many companies being back in the office, there's going to be a lot of employees that said, okay, you guys claimed that all of this back to the office stuff was to improve productivity, to improve growth. Did it happen? So I think a lot of answers are going to come out over the next year that I'm excited to see.
Great. And we'll go to Smiti.
Hey, Matt. So I think one of the things which I want to talk about is how the world has changed, in the past 3-4 years. I think back in 2019, in our pre-COVID era, there was hardly any discussion on things like recognition or mental well-being, right, or general well-being in general. That itself has been a major shift if you look at it from today's trends itself, that employee engagement has generally changed to employee experience. So that's the focus for most organizations today, that they're not just focused on engaging employees, they want to provide that end-to-end experience right from an employee joining an organization to leaving that organization. So that is the first shift which we've seen happening. And we started talking about well-being, mental wellness, appreciation, all of that linking to higher retention, which was not there earlier. The second thing which has changed is the overall ideology around giving more choices and more options to employees to pick and choose what they want, instead of just giving a standardized Amazon gift card or a gym membership. Today's millennia, Gen Z, and we have like the new set of people joining the workforce daily. We have boomers, zoomers, and we're going to have, I don't know how many levels of that in the future. They want to have a gift of choice. So there's also a general push on that how can we give more options to our employees? How can we drive better utilization of our benefits? And people are using it, and we're not just spending it and getting it wasted. The third trend is primarily around the adoption of technology and how, we've seen artificial intelligence, we've seen, chat GPTs and the generative AIs of the world, which have literally taken over the world by storm, right? So those, the deployment of that in HR tech is also something which has happened in the recent times, and that's insane. I mean, nobody thought that HR tech would actually have things like AI and ML or predictive analysis or personalization built in it. So that's, I think, the third trend, which has completely been different from what it used to be a couple of years ago.
That's great. Andre?
Yeah, I think just to back cleanup, I agree with everything that Lee and Smitty said. For me, I sort of stand back from the whole thing saying, hey, what we know is $1.9 trillion in the US of lost productivity. We know that it's $8.8 trillion globally, right? And in the end, I think the question that we should be asking is, are our employees, the talent that comes to work every day, are they getting more from our companies than they're getting? And if not, how do we change that? Because right now, work is way too hard. There's way too many people struggling with burnout. There's way too many people that feel lonely. They feel disenfranchised. They feel unseen. And the interesting thing is in our day-to-day lives, we know those things are fixable. We know we have access to better technology, better solutions, and more ways to make people feel seen. And I think we just did that. The productivity starts to increase pretty dramatically. Otherwise, everyone's going to exercise their choice, which is what I love about the moment we're in, right? Is that even in a hard job market, talent's saying, I'm unwilling to work to live, or sorry, live to work. I want to work to live. And I just think our ability as talent to make those choices is putting organizations in a place where they better gut check their strategies pretty hard right now.
That's great. Okay, Scott, we'll get to our next topic. It's a great lead in to employee needs. So next slide. This is a slide. It's very busy, so don't panic. We can make this available, but Josh Bershwin Company is Josh Bershwin is a HR leader, frequent lecturer, and they did some research around, hey, what matters most today? And to the point our panelists just made, things have changed. So if we look at from an employee perspective, what are the biggest, most important things when we are in an organization? And what they came up with, hey, trust in that company, which means transparency and mission and purpose, but also this idea of a supportive workplace, some inclusion. Hey, I can be heard or seen, and this idea of caring. So that comes along into well-being and health, purposeful work, and then the leadership behind all this to recognize it and then put it into practice. So we're going to go ahead and get back to our panelists. And this time we'll start with Smiti. We'll continue our round robin. But in terms of, hey, how are organizations trying to deal with this concept of what do our employees want, or what do we need, and what are you seeing in the marketplace?
Yeah. So let me first talk about, general motivation for an employee to continue in an organization, right? So there's this great book. I recommend everyone to read it. It's a book called Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. It's by Daniel Pink, and it's a beautiful book. And it says that if you really want to be motivated, and you can just link it to work, there are three things which need to merge together. First is purpose, like what is the objective of me being in this organization? Second, and do I link to, do I agree to or resonate to what the organization stands for? Second is mastery, how good I am at my job. That motivates me even further, right? If I'm horrible at my job, I might have a great culture, but I hate my job, I will not stay there. And third is autonomy. Like, do I feel that I have the autonomy to make decisions or have an access to change things or, put my opinions forward in the organization? So if you have like the right balance of all these three things, that really creates the right set of motivation for any employee to stick around in an organization. And that's what organizations should be looking at when they're creating their retention or engagement programs around how we can merge these three things together. So the whole employee experience, starting from onboarding or even getting an offer letter to leaving the organization for any employee, is filled with a bunch of moments, right? The moment I get an offer letter, the moment it's my first day at work, the moment I go for my orientation, the moment I'm done with my training, the moment I get my first appreciation at work, or the moment it's my birthday or work anniversary, or I complete 3 years, 5 years, the moment I get promoted. And those moments are the moments that matter in any employee's life cycle. So what organizations who are focused on engagement are focused on is making an impact in those moments in an employee life cycle. And that's where you can make the maximum impact in retaining them. Lastly, once you have created your engagement programs, retention structures, recognition programs, it's important to constantly take feedbacks from employees to see whether they're really working or not. And basis the results, basis the feedbacks, you reinvent, you restructure your programs, and you restart basis those feedbacks. I think that is what has been primarily the modus operandi for most organizations who've been doing a great job in engaging their employees.
Great. We'll go to Andre.
Yeah, I mean, Smitty covered a lot of ground, and so I think the only two things I would add is the first one is, one of the things I'm seeing as we talk to employees that are leaving companies is two things are happening. One is there's just a mismatch of expectations. Whatever I'm being sold as I come through the door in the first date sort of interview process, it isn't holding true when I get there. And MIT did a really interesting piece of research in this space where they studied the espoused values of companies, what executives stand up and say their company's about, versus the felt experience of those employees on review sites. And they found zero correlation. So whatever we're promising isn't what people feel like is true in reality. I think the second thing that's really important for me is understand that in this day and age, social media, technology, all the things, we are experiencing a time when everybody's infinitely browsing. So you might have a highly engaged employee right now in this moment, but it's 50-50 pick 'em, whether tomorrow they wake up and their head's up and they're looking at the world and they're seeing greener grass and they're literally got one foot out the door. And so my advice to all of us is we've got to rethink our strategy to re-recruit people back to our companies. You have to remind them, why is the world better with us in it? How do we make money? How do we get work done? And what's our promise to you? Because with all the onslaught of all the greener grass, they just simply forget. And so it's not complicated. And so between Lee and Smitty and a lot of the other companies out there, you have avenues to be able to remind people why the place that they're at is the right place. Often people leave not because it's toxic or it's too hard or it's too stressful. It's that they actually forgot why they were there in the first place. And so simple strategy, but a couple ideas for me, Matt.
Thanks. And Lee?
Well, Smitty and Andre really encapsulated a lot, but I wanted to piggyback off of one of the things that Andre said, which is the mismatch of expectations. And I really think that the hiring and the interview system is quite broken, and it naturally is that way because you really only have such a short amount of time to get to know that candidate, and that candidate gets to know the company. And of course, on top of that, you're often on some kind of time pressure because let's say you don't have a job, you need to find a job, or you want to fill in that position as quickly as possible because everybody who hires knows how time consuming it is. So you can't just, like, within reason, you can't really spend like days or weeks getting to know somebody. But we all know that from our personal relationships and our friendships, our love life, which I often like to compare, interestingly enough, to the corporate world, is that it's really hard to get to know somebody in 1-2 days. It takes months, it takes years to really get to know somebody. And so I think what matters most, besides of course what's on the screen and what was shared already, is like really trying to evolve with the individual and trying to understand what are their short-term goals, what are their long-term goals, and bridging that gap. We just had a designer that was with us for 2 years. And it's always tough when you hire someone with an entrepreneurial background because oftentimes they get that entrepreneurial itch again. And it was really great that even though we had a wonderful relationship, it was time for us to say goodbye to one another because he wanted to pursue that entrepreneurial that vision again. And we want to support that. Like, we don't want to have someone stay and feel disengaged and wishing that every day they were, living their own life and vision. It's sometimes easier to just really kind of have those chats with those employees and understand what are their goals and visions. And it might not align with where the organization is. And that's something that you can align their expectations and be okay if they leave. And sometimes it's like, oh, this is perfect. We have what you want and what we want is exactly aligned. I'll also add continuous learning. I think, everybody starts a job with hope. And we forget that hope is both ways, right? That the employee comes in and they're like, it will be different than my last job. And maybe I won't have the toxic trauma that my last job had. And the employer is like, oh, the last employee wasn't that great. I really hope someone will come and make an impact. So there's a lot of hope and expectations that are from both sides. And that's already sensitive as it is. But I think employees, they want to do better. They're driven, and we need to learn how we can better support their growth by fostering a culture of continuous learning.
Hey, Lee, one of the sorry, Matt, one of the
Go
things
ahead.
you said that I think is really vital, and you see it as a place where managers often get tripped up, is your allegiance as a manager is to make sure that you're becoming a star maker, which is a word I use from kind of Vidula Ball. Your job is to make sure any individual working for you reaches their full potential. And more times than not, that means they're going to go. They've got to go. They've got to go do and experience other things. And if you work that way to say, hey, my allegiance isn't to hold on to you, no matter what, it's to actually help you find your potential, they'll also find their way back. And so I just encourage managers on the heels of what Lee said to have an honest and authentic conversation about your employees' careers without expectation of what that means for their place in your company. And they will be more trusting, feel more valued, feel more seen, and inherently then work harder for you in the times that you have them, which is what you want. So I love the comment, Lee. I think it's super important.
Thanks, Andre.
That's great. Okay, Scott. Now let's talk about specifically under engagement, employee recognition. And then we'll go to, from employee recognition, we're going to go to employee experiences. But first, let's check out recognition. So from Ted Lasso, the good old thank you note goes a long way. Next slide. So what are we seeing out there? Well, in a nutshell, we're seeing companies and organizations provide more frequent and more personal recognition. And we see this in a lot of forms in a lot of different companies. But what are we seeing? We're seeing places where there used to never be any recognition. Now there's recognition, like service marks, 30 days of employment, attendance, safety awards that are recognized and celebrated, birthdays and anniversaries, employee groups and digitized employee groups and committees, learning and achievement. And then we're seeing leaderboards, not just for sales, but for all sorts of things. And why? Because it recognizes that individual achievement and it gets you up there so that the greater organization can see what you've done. So this tees up, again, love to hear from the panel. And this time we're going to start with Andre to kick us off on, hey, what are you seeing in terms of employee engagement, specifically recognition?
Yeah, I always think about recognition, back to that re-recruitment comment, as a profound opportunity to show people what great looks like, right? All our performance systems are built to kind of show you where you have to get better, show you where you have to be different, show you where you need to grow. And recognition is one of those places that says the question everyone walks in asking every day is, how can I be great here? And recognition gives you the chance to make examples of the people who are showing the rest of us the way. And in that process, you also just, again, make stars out of regular individuals doing really hard work for you every single day. And as long as someone sees someone like me up there on that board, in that video, in that story, then I'm that much more motivated to learn and grow and deliver and be a part of this company. So, I mean, it's kind of that simple for me, is recognition has a profound ability to create and craft the culture that you want to see.
That's great. Lee?
Yeah. I always like to just bring it back where we all like to, get recognized. Like it's a great feeling. And it's one that, I, at least in my opinion, that because the feeling is such a positive and strong one, I really try to listen to the kind of that voice in my head when I'm in front of an employee. And when you sit there and you're reviewing their work, and if it's a small win, then I share that and I'm like, this is awesome. And if it's a big one, then I go on Slack and make a public announcement. But I really actively make the time to recognize. And if you a tip that I have, that if you don't kind of naturally have this, and sometimes it's because of where we grew up. I know this was definitely a muscle that I had to work because my parents did not give me recognition. So that was definitely once I had in the earlier part of my leadership, some people would be like, it'd be really nice to hear like that the work that I did was good. And I was like, oh yeah, it kind of sucks when people don't tell you that. So I started carving it out in my week. I spend 30 minutes a week. It's in my calendar. It's on Friday morning, and I put a reminder for myself that if I haven't recognized a good amount of what I felt is a good standard, I'll go ahead and make the time to write that thing out. And it doesn't have to take all 30 minutes. It can take 10 minutes. But I think it's just also remembering that recognition, there's so many different facets to it. So I just talked a lot about that real-time recognition, is like noticing when something feels good in terms of the work that you're in front of, and recognizing it. But peer-to-peer recognition, we talked about personalized recognition. So, not just saying like, good job, but like going the extra mile by saying, this is what I really liked about what you did. Continuous feedback. And Andre said this in his comments, like, we don't want a compliment from our loved one once a year. So you gotta do it on a regular basis. Like if my fiance only called me pretty once a year, I would cry. So really start thinking about yourself personally, and then be like, how would I like to be treated? And then start to treat your colleagues that way.
That's great. And Smitty?
Yeah, I kind of resonate with what Lee said. Recognition is something which, even when you're a child, it matters so much to you, right? And it's interesting, we've done this tiny thought experiment where, we shot an ad and we're still to release it, but we called in like a bunch of people from different parts of the industry. Like there was a mother with her child, there was a military guy, there was a doctor, and they did not know what they were coming for, but we said, you're going to be part of this short ad. And there was this random person who was thanking the military guy for all they did for the country, some patient of the doctor who helped save his mother's life, and the mother simply appreciating her child. And we captured those expressions on video, how people's face just lights up when you're given a thank you or an appreciation or a recognition for doing something amazing. So covering on what Lee said, it's important to also point out or kind of make them understand what was the reason why you're thanking them, or what impact have they made in your life or your career or your growth. So that becomes really important. The second thing I think is that recognition should be instant. With a lot of organizations, I mean, we're seeing those trends of annual appraisals or bonuses. They're just not that relevant anymore. If I tell you 3 months later that, hey, you did a great job 3 months ago, I think it just, you lose the point, right? You forget all about it by then, and the impact of the recognition reduces significantly because it's not instant. So recognition needs to be instant. It needs to be right then and there. And like Andre mentioned earlier, managers need to be empowered to be able to instantly give that reward to their employees. So I think that's primarily what we've seen in terms of trends. That one, the fact that it needs to be instant, and second, again, I come back to the gift of choice, that people get a choice to pick and choose what they want as a reward. I think that's pretty important in today's landscape.
Great. We've had a few questions come in, but I want to just do one follow-up regarding this. This is from, we've had a couple come in. I'm a smaller organization. And then how do we automate or enforce that for some of our managers? So in other words, is there any best practice tips for maybe, smaller than Google in terms of, hey, what are some practice tips, not just for me, but for the organization? How do I instill that?
Well, Matt, a non-technology one that's super easy is in every meeting, allocate 5 minutes at the end to do positive gossip, right? What was something that someone on our team or one of our stakeholders did to help us achieve our purpose? And then everyone on that team should have the responsibility to write a note to the person that's not in the room that we're talking about. And it does two things, right? One is it starts to help us calibrate what behaviors matter and what we're looking for in terms of excellence. And secondly, it connects us as humans to each other. And it doesn't take any more than 5 or 10 minutes, 5 minutes for the conversation, 5 minutes for everyone to write an email to someone that wasn't in the room. And it's kind of that simple. So I'd say every manager could implement that tomorrow, no matter the size of the company you're in. That's
great. Any other from Lee or Smiti?
Yeah, I have a few tips. So one of the things that we do to instill this regular recognition is very simple. I would say free. Is on our Slack or whatever kind of group channel you have. We have a gratitude channel, and everybody in the company has access to it. And I do think that it's important that senior leadership is invested in writing into the gratitude channel, because then other people follow. Another tip, though, is that we do quarterly performance reviews, and it's 360-degree reviews. So when employees grade their managers, one of the things that we grade them on is, do you feel recognized? Do you feel appreciated by your manager? And that holds the manager accountable towards participating in these types of actions. So those are two very important ones. And then the third one is pretty simple. If you do have an HR team, at least for our corporate anniversaries, which we put a very big emphasis on at Confetti, sometimes, of course, it can be hard for people to remember, and titles change, people move within the organization. But the HR is responsible for the corporate anniversary, and they tag the manager to write a shout out to the employee, and you get the HR leader sends a reminder a week before that corporate anniversary, and HR would essentially plug it into their calendar to monitor.
That's great. Smiti?
Yeah, I love the 360-degree feedback piece, and that's something I was also going to add on, because it also pushes managers to be accountable of their rewards, right? And just to top on that, what you could also do is you could recognize those recognizers, like who recognizes the manager. So you could create like a great manager program where all of the managers who are doing a great job recognizing their team members also get recognized for their efforts. They get like, one of the things you could do is, like, we have this social feed, we call it the buzz, and it gets automatically posted. People get recognized on it, and it just also creates a lot of FOMO for people who are not recognizing their team members enough. So it's important to also drive that in terms of constantly checking whether you're getting the right percentage of managers awarding, and create that positive motivation for people to constantly reward.
Great. All right, Scott, next slide. Okay, let's get into employee experience. And in 2024, so what are the trends we're seeing out there? Well, we're seeing more experiences and more consistent employee experiences. So what does that mean? Experience has to do with, hey, that feedback, more career development type of experiences, different, more contests, fun, events that are fun, social activities, groups. We're seeing a lot more and more intentionality around, hey, what are some experiences, and not just the happy hours, right? But what else can we be doing? So that's generally what we're seeing. And I want to go to our panelists, and then let's start this. I think we're back to where we at, Lee?
I'm here.
Kick us off.
So I'll dive into the events and fun section because that's what we specialize in at Confetti. And similarly to what I said about the positive recognition, it's really important that these events are not just a once a year occurrence. So again, like to compare it to dating, you don't want to go on a date with your significant other once a year. You got to do it on a regular basis. Otherwise, y'all might feel like, where's the romance? So it's a good goal if you're limited on funds or if your company is, going through a really big growth spurt and everybody's just feeling stressed. A quarterly cadence. And the way that I break it down is you can have 2 team events, 1 departmental event, 1 company-wide event. You want to go through that rotation. The goal is to do monthly experiences. And for those monthly experiences, you do want to set a goal both for monthly and quarterly. But for quarterly, everyone should assume that there is pretty much like a 100% attendance. It's a good goal. You want to try to get between 75 to 90 in terms of attendance for those quarterly events. But for monthly, you can start to give people a little bit more optionality and let them essentially, as we were talking about, Smiti often enough was like personalization, customization, giving them that breadth of options really allows them to pick and choose. And you can have certain emphasis of, again, team, departmental, and company-wide each month and rotate the experiences that you're doing in every single month. And I know one question that I often get a lot is like in-person events or virtual events, because because Confetti currently only focuses on virtual experiences, people think that I'm going to be like only virtual. But I think that there's a place for both, and it should be mixed. One isn't better than the other. You want to be able to come together, especially if you're a remote first company, once every year, twice a year if you're privileged, once every year and a half. But you need something to keep the team together and keep that glue and that bond in between. And that's where virtual experiences really come in handy. Invite your significant others, invite your kids to occasionally a Zoom video and let the parents, show off their fun kids, and the kids get to interact with work. And when you bring your personal life into the Zoom room or whatever virtual conference you're in, there's something very humanizing about that. Like right now, y'all see me as Lee Rubin, CEO. But if you saw my Bernedoodle that's, sleeping underneath my legs right now, then all of a sudden, I'm the dog mom. I have more to me than just the work and just the advice that I'm giving. So that's helpful.
That's great. Smiti?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of fatigue today in the organizations around having too many engagement programs or having too many apps, right? So one of the things which maybe companies can do is try to create a more integrated or a more seamless experience for people. Not only does it educate them better because I can see all of the things in one umbrella, it also increases my chance of using it more. If I don't know where I go for my perks or where I go for my rewards or where I go for my engagement or my events or my communities, it's just too much information for an employee to handle. So integrability becomes really important, that all your systems are talking to each other and employees actually can hop on, hop off platforms without realizing it. So bringing as many initiatives as you can under one umbrella is an important part to create a consistent employee experience. The second thing is that a lot of times people think that, hey, I've deployed this digital platform or I've partnered with this, vendor partner or company, and it's going to magically turn around my engagement score. It does not happen that way. So just because you've deployed technology does not mean that you're going to have unicorns just jumping in and out in your engagement strategy, and you just have like ESAT scores shooting up magically. So it's a constant process. It takes effort to drive adoption, to drive communication, to engage employees, to remind them again and again that, hey, this is amazing what we've built for you, and this is what you need to do, to set up the right reminders, to set up the right nudges, and use automation for that. That also helps in driving a more consistent experience than just launching an app, having it excite everybody for the first 3 months, and then just dies down over time. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Great. Andre?
Yeah, I mean, I'll come at it from a little bit different angle. I spend a lot of my time with executives in and around the companies. And one of the things that I always encourage them to do is to get in touch with your most stressed employee. I don't know that they even can see the experience that many of us are having at work. And the thing I would say is that, hey, if you're an employee who is stressed, who is burnout, who feels like they've given everything the last 2 years, you might not even be in a place to hear recognition. You might not even place to accept that it's authentic. And so the first thing I would say is get everyone up the starting line. We have not been allowed or able to process many of the stress cycles we've been in. There's this great book called Burnout that really talks about burnout in a different way. It's not about having too much on our plates. It's that we never fully go through our stress cycles, and therefore it just compounds. And so for recognition to work as a manager, the first thing you need to do is know who your most stressed employee is and create a space for your employees to finish those stress cycles so we can get to the starting line and then really start to focus on all the great ideas that Lee and Smiti are sharing about how to keep engagement high once we have it.
Geez, these are great comments. For all of you that are attending, we've had a few chats that want access to this webinar, and you will have access. We're also going to be providing key takeaways. So as part of your little email that will come with you, we have a couple people that are writing down these key takeaways, and you will have access to the link, and you will have access to the profiles of the 3 panelists. So let's move on, Scott, to the next slide. Great. Along with experiences, I just wanted to touch on this piece. We've touched on this 2 or 3 different times. It's not the one-time engagement, right? It's not the one-time fun event. It's the quarterly, it's the monthly, and it's the feedback loop that's important. So we have seen, comes from Spencer Stewart. This is hot off the press. Consistent experiences equals that higher engagement. Next slide. So what does this all mean? Hey, employee engagement is a higher return on investment on virtually all your different metrics, right? So lots of stats around this, but higher employee productivity, lower turnover, higher revenue, lower absenteeism, higher customer satisfaction, all of this can be tracked back. And the reason we're including this slide is most often we get questions, hey, this is great, but how do I get the budget? Or, hey, this is great, but how do I sell up to my CFO? Well, it's very simple to do a formula, and we spend a lot of time and always able to help you out with that. But it just makes common sense, right? Happier employee, more productive, more likely to stay. And the converse is true. If you're not doing engagement, I think Andre opened it up. Hey, it's a wake-up call today. You need to be taking note and providing some of these action steps. All right, next slide. Okay, so we're going to wrap up, and then we're going to have a quick concluding remarks from our panelists. But from Doug Conant, hey, to win the marketplace, you must first win the workplace. So we'll go ahead and close up our slides now. and I want to go around the room. And Andre, we're going to have you start this one off. And concluding remarks, we covered a lot of ground. And for all of our attendees, what are your thoughts on all things related to engagement?
I would probably start where you just ended, Matt, which is engagement is a day-to-day ground game. You are not going to win engagement in a survey or a quarterly meeting or an all hands. You're going to win it in how you show up in the small and tiny moments, and in this sort of moment where everybody feels like they don't have enough time. We're over revving on getting the thing done so I can get to the next meeting, get to the next thing, and go see the next person, when in fact it's 2 minutes. Look someone in the eye. Say, how are you? Where are you? What do you need? And how can I help? And I think that alone is what people need more than anything. And the second thing I'd just say is, anybody that's a manager out there, your job is impossibly hard. You used to just have to be a cheerleader, a coach, and maybe a delegator of work. And now you've got all of these jobs. You're a counselor, you're a police person, you're a parent, you're a therapist, you're all these things, and you have less resources and less time. And so I just say, hey, I feel for you. And one of the things I can tell you is that if you can get in the practice of gratitude and recognizing your employees, it's going to just feed you as well. And so just know we see you, your job's hard, and many of the things that Lee, Smitty, myself, Matthew are trying to do are in service of trying to make that day a little bit easier for those of you who are leading our teams. I mean, it's, we're out there doing the work we need you to do. So keep at it and good luck. And we're here to help.
Great. Lee?
I love what Andre said. Work is hard. Relationships is hard. And employee engagement, there aren't any quick wins that are going to turn things over overnight. And even if you do everything, there's probably going to be a couple of employees that still won't be happy, still won't be satisfied. But injecting that level of authenticity at work, reminding ourselves, our colleagues, that we're all trying our best, and we're all humans spinning on this rock of a planet in the middle of nowhere, and we're all on the same page together. We're all on the same team, and listen to the team and see where that goes. But echoing Andre's final words, which is I really love to be there for the community, and if there's anything that I can do and answer offline, would love for anyone to reach out and continue the dialogue.
Thanks. Smitty?
Yeah, so there's this concept called Maslow's hierarchy of employee engagement. It's derived from Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, right? So it has 3 stages. The first stage, which is the lowest part of the pyramid, is survival and security. So if an employee is only working in an organization for survival and security, they're most probably highly disengaged. The second level of the pyramid is where you reach belongingness and where you reach self-esteem, which means that you feel that the purpose of the organization aligns with your goals and you feel that you belong in that organization. Plus, you feel good about yourself. You wake up every morning and you're excited to go to work. You feel secure wherever you are, and you think that you're doing great. And the highest level of engagement, which is the top of the pyramid, is self-actualization, which is when you're so secure and you're so happy that you're good, but you also start thinking, what can I do for others? And I think self-actualization is where you reach that point when you're ready for leadership, when you're ready to, create an impact in the organization. And what every company should strive for is bringing all employees a level above in the pyramid. So, getting everyone a level engaged, a level higher is what every company should strive for. And that should be like your ground level metric to identify engagement in the company.
Wow, three great wrap-ups. We have, I'm getting shelled over here with lots of questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to all of those, but I want to repeat that we will be sending out an email to everyone that attended and registered, and there is an avenue for that questions to be answered. So we will have profile of Dr. Martin and his wonderful book, The Wrong Fit, Right Fit, along with Lee, Information Confetti, and at Advantage Club, both our information as well as the ability to meet with an engagement leader. So one of our senior folks talk about any and all of the topics that were covered. So we appreciate everyone taking time out of their schedule today on this critically important and really fun, impactful, powerful topic. So thank to our panelists and thank you all for joining today.